Okay, folks, welcome back to the Antony Gordon Show. We have the special treat and privilege of someone who I think is uniquely fitting to be a guest on the show based on the themes that we discuss and based on the exposure that he has to a tremendous cross-section of folks in, certainly in this country, a good friend and an outstanding comedian, Avi Liberman. Avi, a person who's born in Israel, then goes on to be raised in Texas and then comes out to LA, would either be a serial killer or a comedian. I mean,
right? Yes, those are my two choices, pretty much. Yeah. So
I think what we were saying before we switched on live to the 37 million.
And I went to school in New York, which adds another layer of
otherwise you're not confused.
Mental deprivation.
So
New York.
As we were coming up the elevator to the studio here, I mentioned to you that I did a lot of comedy in South Africa, and I found it incredibly therapeutic to be able to just burst the bubble of life. People take themselves a little too serious and just really turn things a little bit upside down. And I've seen your material. I love your stuff.
Oh, thank you.
I think you're very talented. I think it takes a lot more skill, a lot more talent to make an audience laugh without the shock treatment of being dirty, swearing, sexist, and there's literally a few handfuls of guys at your level who can do a clean gig.
Yeah, and I think that stuff kind of comes in waves. I say when I first started, I was given advice. It just wasn't my style. I have no problem with comics that are dirty.
Sure.
I would hear that a lot. Oh, it's just dirty. It's not fun. I go, so really? So you're going to tell me that someone, like a Richard Pryor is not funny? I mean, he's funny. He's filthy. Yeah. There are a lot of dirty comics that are funny. It's just, there's an old thing that Carl Reiner, I think, coined. He said, as long as it's twice as funny as it is dirty, then it's fine. But again, I think you have to be honest in yourself. I'm just not a dirty guy. It's just not my thing, but I remember I did a show with Doug Stanhope. Uh-huh. So Doug grew up in Vegas going to, that was the environment he was in. So Doug is a riot, he's dirty and he's a riot. He's one of my favorite guys to watch, and I'm super clean and the two of us get along great. I haven't seen him in a while. I bumped into him actually at an airport recently, but I think you have to be yourself, and that's the biggest thing about being a comic. So as someone who grew up in Houston going to a modern Orthodox Jewish day school. Yeah, it wasn't really my environment. I'm not experiencing what Doug grew up growing up, or what Richard Pryor was raised in a brothel, so obviously the experiences are different, but you just got to be who you are. But yeah, and plus I learned, I remember Mark Schiff, another, who he told me you'll have more opportunities if you're clean. I think, and it was kind of my style anyway, so it wasn't really a stretch for me to kind of be that way. But yeah, it's true. You just, I'm more comfortable. One of the nicest compliments I got, Chris Spencer, who's a very talented, who he is. He, actor and comedian. I took him on my Israel tour, and he, jokingly once, I think we're in the foyer of the Laugh Factory, he goes, Avi, you're kind of like a utility comic. A utility comic. You can throw you in any show and you're fine. I've done black shows, I've done Latino shows, I've done the Jewish shows. I play Vegas still, I've got that coming up in May. So, I'm fine. I don't mind. I'm not going to try to pander to what you're doing. So
you don't become chameleon, you are who you are. It's uniform. You're true to yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously
But again, that takes a long time. When I first start, like every comic, you're trying to find out who you are, what's your message, where you're coming from. But you got to be yourself. Obviously, it's fair to adjust to the environment you're in. Like when I'm in Vegas, am I doing material about Las Vegas? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sure.
Am I doing that in Israel? No. Right. But you hope to find jokes that cross over into both. That's the goal.
So you touched on something which I think is a good launch point to an area that I for sure we need to talk about. The way this podcast really started was, I did a bunch of things with Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro, and we're talking about, there's a generation that is, without any critical eye, is just embracing hook, line, and sinker what pop culture is imparting. And I think...
Right, yeah. It's much worse than when I was growing up.
For sure.
It's way worse. I mean, you're growing up and there were 3 stations on TV and that was a big deal.
Right.
I actually remember talking to comedian Ronnie Schell. I don't know if you know who he is. He was on Gomer Pyle years ago. And he said, listen, when I was coming up, being on TV was a big deal. If you're on TV, it was a huge thing. Now everyone's on TV. It's a much different scenario. I mean, there was no... just when I was in college, email was just starting my senior year But there was no YouTube. There were no streaming
Completely
services and channels.
different.
It's a whole different ballgame now.
So
and I think like with Instagram especially, and I'm guilty of it myself, you'll check it just to see what's going on, but it's like everyone's life is perfect on there. And I know people who post on there, and I know that it's not. I know they're like depressed about things and upset about things, but you can't post something like that or you're a complainer and a whiner.
Yeah.
But if everything you're posting is, I'm at this party,
Right.
I think it's fair if you bump into a celebrity. Okay, that's fun. That's fine. I never mind that. Look, okay, that's exciting. That's and that could be fun for people. And for me, it's a strange thing because I sort of have to be on there to let people know where I am.
Right.
I have shows coming up, and a lot of people do find out about my shows, through an Instagram, through a Facebook post. So there is an element of work involved.
For sure.
So that's part of the problem. I think if you're in entertainment, you're going to be trapped by this, and you're going to have to look at other people's situations going on. But I think for teens, it's got to be just vicious.
It's vicious.
Nowadays, you're looking at all these perfect people and, it's just with their perfect lives. And, in your gut, it's not true, but it's got to be hard to see.
It's people whose internal world can be completely imploding and they have this facade. So there's two shoots that I wanted to go with this. Firstly, when did you know in your journey, Avi, that this is your calling, this seems to be your vocation, and now it's time to hone your discipline, your skills, and become, what you've become today. Certainly, one of the most likable and
thank you. Well, if I can fool you, Anthony. I think I knew when I flunked out of law school and med school, and that was no, I'm teasing. I never applied. I was always interested. I would say I was always a bit of a class clown, and I could do impressions of a lot of people. So, and I remember, I think we must have been in 7th or 8th grade. We did kind of a goof, like a play of all of our teachers. And I played every teacher.
So you knew that. I mean, that's a talent.
And I was, and I'd look for the voices, but it was also like the rhythms of people. And I do all these obscure people who like no one knows and no one does.
Yeah.
I do when I'll listen to ones that crack up my friends. I was just doing the car. Mark Levin.
Yeah, sure.
I do. Because he's either completely calm or explosive. There's he's
binary.
He's right. It's just like, something else, Mr. Producer? These idiots. That's right, I said it. Idiot. Like he'll go that route. And then I was doing Dr. Sebastian Gorka most recently. And I did him, but like 3 people know, to make 5 of my friends laugh, and it's other obscure people. This guy, Sam Chewy, who's a big travel talk, I watch him and I do it. I just do him for my friend Bruce and he just cracks up laughing.
But that's, I'm also the kind of guy who's, you to be able to pick up, hone in and mimic. And it's not done to bring people down. It's just...
No, it's flattery.
It's flattery for sure.
I think it's great that they're unique in their own sense to the point where you can do an impression of them. I think it's an interesting thing. So, but I started doing that.
Yeah.
And I was always a bit of a class clown. And then it's like when I got to, in high school, I was always the one during the Blockbuster days.
Sure.
I always wanted to rent the comedy or if there was a stand-up special, like that's always what I wanted to see. And then by the time my senior year in college, I began to do a little more theater. And right after that, I began to watch stand-up, I'd say more analytically, my senior year in college. And then I moved straight to LA and, started with the acting stuff and that was it.
So is there a particular comic or that you would say, this is a role model or this is someone...
Like my dad, I would listen to my dad's, 2,000-Year-Old Man albums. George Carlin, when I was 13, I must have played a place for my stuff like over and over and over again. Pre-rape Cosby, I was always a fan of, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was always fascinated and interested by it. But and then I've gravitated more towards screenwriting, but I don't act as much anymore. But I enjoyed it when I'm doing it, but I don't audition as much and I don't care. Like I know you're not supposed to say it, but
I think that's part of it though, because if you don't care.
Yeah, I was working with an agent, but they weren't, I'd get out every now and then. I would book, over the years, I'd book roles here and there. And is it great when you're working and it's fun and you're on a set and you're in a trailer that's nicer than your apartment? And, it's nice and it's fun. And, you're making great money for the amount of time that you're working. But again, it's very up and down. So I think that comics in general, because there's an element of control that we want. For sure. Because when it comes to, performing, you're writing it, you're performing it, you're doing it. So I think that's why I think screenwriting, to me was, I can write it, I can, craft the story how I want it to go, is a little more appealing, I would say, to a comedic mind than maybe someone else. And the things I write really aren't comedies. I wrote one comedy with a buddy of mine, which is, a great experience. But
so if a genie came out of this bottle and said, Avi, you're going to be successful whether you go left or right. Left, is the journey of a comic, and Wright is as a serious, dramatic, theatrical actor. But you're not going to bomb.
Right.
Which one would you go, left or right?
If I can only pick one or the other?
You have to choose. It's binary, and you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I'd probably pick left. I'd probably do the comedy because that's more in my control.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's with the acting. Yes, can you interpret lines and do things different ways? And yeah, of course. Obviously in physicalizing things certain ways. And I mean, I studied with Stephen Book. It was all acting through improv. So that's it's making the lines your own and doing that kind of stuff. I studied with him for 2.5 years. And it's
serious stuff.
Yeah, did it help? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember one thing that he brought up. He says, crying scares everybody. You see how the actor cries in a script, and that scares people to death, especially the men. Yeah. So, but we learned it was sort of a breathing exercise. Everybody physiologically, like when you laugh, there was a school apparently in South America. I apologize, I don't remember the specifics, but he called them and they were doing a study about that. Does everyone breathe the same way when you laugh or cry or get angry and this? And they said apparently the answer is yes. Like there's certain breathing patterns, like in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Wow.
And he said, if I start to breathe that way, will I evoke that emotion? He goes, we've been just studying that, and the answer appears to be yes.
By just simulating that breathing.
Yes, and even if you don't have tears streaming down your face, if you're physicalizing crying, you look that way. And I remember I had an audition, I still remember to this day, for a Miller beer commercial. Yeah. And you had to walk from point A to point B, but you had to cry. And I'm in there, and these two guys walk in and walk out. Well, they want us to cry, like almost annoyed. Yeah. And I went in, and they go, if you need any time. I go, no, I don't need any time. We had just finished like this crying project. It's like a couple of months. Like it's like working out. You have to kind of exercise the muscle. And not even a callback. I booked it I was just laughing. It's just because I was just learning how to do this. It wasn't really a big deal. So you realize that there are a lot of elements of acting that are, learned skills that you have to do. And there's a reason why
for sure
the top guys are the top guys, they're.
Do you, when I listen to your stuff, I'm trying to figure out what percentage is autobiographical, is about you, and what is parody, what is, or you're just taking your life and saying, it's just going to be lemonade, and let's just take the edge off.
Yeah, people ask me like, where do you get your tone? I would say it's life experiences. A lot of it, especially when I do, I do these tours in Israel a couple of times a year. Now we do it over the Sukkot holiday as well for the Kobe Mendel Foundation. Just plug that.
We're going to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, so excuse me. So I have to. That's a lot of pressure for me because I have to come up with like 15 to 20 minutes of material every single time.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So you can't. I have this. It's frustrating to know that I have this arsenal of stuff that I know works.
Right.
But Jews are impossible. Like, oh, we heard that 9 years ago. They remember everything.
You can't get away with anything.
And it's funny. Or they get upset you didn't do the one they like.
Exactly.
How can you do this joke? I like that. Then But I spent a week in London doing shows, and we were premiering a documentary that we made about the tour called Land of Milk and Funny. Yep. I actually have a website at landofmilkandfunny.com. So it's about the documentary about the tour we do in Israel. And so I spent a week in London. So that gave me, and it was like during the election time. So I was able to pick up some material about that before I went to Israel. So that was good. But again, that's life experience. It's not necessarily all about me, but the audience wants to hear about you. They want to know about you and who you are and your perspectives on things. So
that seems to indicate that there are universal experiences that transcend cultures and that there's certain, life experiences that you can turn on their head and turn into humor, whether you're in Israel, London.
Absolutely. Well, it's most of the comedians I bring aren't Jewish, and there's like an initial concern. Well, I'm not Jewish. Are they going to? I go, yeah, just do your act. They'll love it. Don't worry about it. And they have an easier. Usually, the non-Jewish comics have it's harder for the Jewish comedian because there's this expectation. Well, this guy better be as funny as Seinfeld or Mason. But the non-Jews like, a non-Jew, this must be a real comedian. It's unique. It's a unique experience. Like right. They want to know about you. Like they want to hear about your experiences. And it's the non-Jewish.
I was very intrigued by that. Tell us about the whole Kobe tour.
Yeah, so basically that started in 2003 when things were like really bad there.
Was it 2003 was the Intifada?
Yeah, so the second Intifada, there were suicide bombings and, terrorist attacks and all this stuff going on. So long story short, we came up with the idea of let's just give everybody a safe, fun night out. There are enough people in Israel who, are
for sure
Anglos, from the US and England, Australia, whatever, Canada. So then we put together a show, and most Israelis know English anyway.
Sure.
So we put together a safe, fun night out. That was kind of the theme of it. And I got in touch with the promoter. I mean, this guy, Zev Isaacs, he had brought in Elton John, like huge acts, but no one was coming. So he said, sure, let's try it. So we did that a couple times. and he was the one who got it off the ground. And then a friend of mine took it over as a charitable fundraiser.
Amazing.
And then it sort of morphed into what it's doing now with the Kobe Mandel Foundation. So a few years, it's sort of, oddly enough, in a positive way, it outgrew what the charity was able to handle. So, and then we switched to the Kobe Mandel Foundation. It's been kind of a great marriage.
So who's the beneficiaries of the Kobe Mandel Foundation?
Who gets the money? Yeah, they get the money from the gate. And thankfully we have a few sponsors. We're always looking for more, obviously, to cover costs. And so every ticket from the gate, the more sponsorship we have, the more money that, it's expensive to fly for comics, and all the hotels and all that stuff, and renting the halls and all that, and the websites. And so the money goes to they work with children of trauma. If you've lost any immediate family member, they have a summer camp twice a year for kids. They have grieving mothers groups and year-round programming for families and all that stuff. So.
And you get to choose the comics? Do you get to?
Yeah, my job is to pick the comics, decide like who will mesh you with with who, and who's going on when, and showing them around, and kind of schedule wise. We have producers, Dean and Jeremy Wimp, DJW Productions in Israel. They handle the logistics on the ground, like getting the theaters and what nights and when and all that stuff. But it's my job to make sure during the day that the comics see certain things. It's half tour guide, half performing, and have production on my end. So
I think I mentioned you before. I'm involved in America's Voice in Israel, which basically gets, facilitates trips to Israel with.
Right.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's my little ulterior motive. It's the same thing. Like I want them to come to Israel. Yeah, are they going to have, let them come and have a great time? And they have great shows and entertain the population. God bless. But I want them to go and have a good time. So then they come back and they're secretly they become great emissaries of Israel. Israel's PR is awful.
For sure.
So let them come back and tell them what it's really like. So that's what we do.
So here's a question that I was asked more frequently when I was very involved in comedy in South Africa, and that is, do you always have to be on? I mean, if you're just hanging with your buddies and having a shawarma.
No, I think nowadays enough people know, they can talk to you for a minute. And I tell even younger comics, I go, listen, it's show business. If you're getting up a lot of places, that's great. And you should get on stage wherever you can, but you've got to find a way to get paid for this. Yeah. I mean, it's your job. So you're not always on, if you're a lawyer, you're not coming back and arguing with your wife. Hopefully. So it's, I think people understand nowadays that not every comic is, there's another stereotype. Every comic is secretly depressed and miserable. That's also not true.
That's garbage.
It's, you have all different types. So, but no, it's, I think comics are quick-witted. Yeah. Generally it's off stage, it's your job to find funny things.
Yeah.
We're going to hopefully say funny things off stage that may or may not morph into material.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think regular people aren't. The days of, tell me a joke, that's kind of
that's
over.
passé.
Yeah.
What can you share with us an example where, I can think of things in my life where you literally wanted to take the microphone and take a heckler and just twist his head off?
Yeah, like drunk girls are tough. Yeah. I remember like one specific time in my life where I got angry on stage. And it was just this drunk girl who would not shut up.
And she was just
and it was at the Laugh Factory. Like, it's a really great club. And
the Laugh Factory is huge.
Yeah, and she just wasn't, and I remember I got upset. And I realized, you can't get angry on stage. You have to, it's like it was glossed over quickly, but I remember like feeling angry. Yeah, she was just obnoxious. And, it's like one time I had a woman, she wasn't drunk, she was just miserable. And I remember I was in Vegas, and I remember I'd said something, I'd asked like a gender, she responded, I was doing some crowd, I was talking about being a teacher and what that's like, and being a teaching assistant, and she responded, and I said something, and I couldn't hear her, and I said, I'm sorry, what did you say? And she goes,
you genuinely couldn't hear her?
Yeah, I just didn't hear her. Right. I said, I'm sorry, ma'am, could you repeat that? And she goes, just like a man, not paying attention to anything I'm saying. And I said, and I remember getting upset for a split second, but I responded, I go, just like a woman, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're not going to come out ahead in this situation. I have a microphone, I'm going to, and I've been doing this a long time at this point. Like, so you'll have a few of those that pop up every now and then. But I remember getting upset about that, but I verbally responded with a joke back at her. But the other one, I got upset. And it's oddly enough, like they say like bachelor parties versus bachelorette parties. Guys are bigger. They hold their liquor a little bit better, and they'll kind of calm down. They're not. But the girls' bachelorette parties, it's like, talk about Michelle. Like, no one cares about Michelle or knows Michelle in this audience. Like, just take it easy. It's just, and this is their one big crazy night out. Yep. The guys tend to cut. They asked me that too. It's like our bachelor party stuff. I go, no, not as bad. They could be. Drunk guys are drunk guys. It's tough. But usually in a comedy club, everybody around you wants to have a good time. Shut up and listen to the comic on stage. It's,
And as time has gone on, Avi, because you've had success, you've been around, which is obviously a testament to your skill and the fact that you've got a very receptive audience. How's the dynamics and the audience changed? Because one of the things about the whole show is just how the world has changed, how the millennial generation is just, there's so many.
Yeah, everyone's offended on behalf of someone else.
Yeah, everyone.
That's what I find hilarious.
Everyone's pissed off.
They're just, even Seinfeld. You can't get more mainstream, funny, unoffensive than Jerry Seinfeld. And he won't play colleges. I just think like everyone looks for a reason to be offended on behalf of someone else.
Yeah.
Just relax. Take it easy. It's not that big a deal. I don't know why everyone cowers to this like Twitter mob. Stop apologizing. It drives me nuts when comics apologize.
Yeah.
Stop. Don't. It's enough. Sorry you were offended. Move on.
Yeah.
And these people, like, I always wonder myself, I was like, what if the person wasn't fired for what they said? Do you think would it really matter a week later? Like, no one would care. They really wouldn't, because they'd move on to the next thing that they're going to be outraged about. So stop caving into these, bullies, which is what they are. They're just online and bullies.
And it's a tremendous mob mentality.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Where people self-censor and they mute themselves for fear of what?
No, I know. That's the thing. It's, are these people going to hire you? Somebody, tweeting that they're angry at you is not giving you a job. Take it easy. Yeah, so let them be offended. There's nothing that you can do about it. It's absurd. To fire a guy like what SNL did, I thought was absurd. To pick on a guy for something he did 2 years ago on a podcast, come on, move on. So if you hired him, do you really think that there'd be protests outside every single day for, it's enough. The guy didn't do it over something you said.
And I would imagine when you launched your career, this was not exactly part and parcel of the dynamic.
No, and again, it's harder for other comics. I don't play the clubs as much. I still do. I sort of specialize in Jewish events. That's sort of that's my wheelhouse. What they say is stand up, get good at it and find your niche. That's my niche. If you ask someone, hey, we need someone to do 45 minutes to an hour of squeaky clean material in front of a bunch of Orthodox Jews. Good luck. Like most comics can't or have no interest in doing that.
Right.
I can do it. It's a fefew other guys. You can count them on your hand. We know each other. And
for sure.
We try to help each other out. I did this gig. You should look into this guy next time. When people ask me for references and stuff, but that's kind of my wheelhouse. Doing, synagogue events, banquets, school fundraisers, all that's sort of what I do well. So I'm not even in the clubs as much, but I still hear it. I don't push as much, to get club work as much anymore. But it's even I have to deal with it. And I know the environments that I'm in. It's you have to toe the line and be squeaky clean and unoffensive and all that stuff. But it's even in that world. At least I know going in, if I'm playing an Orthodox synagogue, no monkeying around. Like, you have to keep it clean and not be offensive.
So where's the line?
Few times it is refreshing though when I get to go and perform at a club, like the Laugh Factory, the Improv, or wherever in Vegas, and you can kind of let loose
at least a little bit. So where's the line between you have to be so politically correct that it's so neutral that you become it's just a bland narrative.
Yeah, well, I think it comes in waves. I think that people are getting so sick of this now.
Yeah.
That it'll turn around. And I think comics will, because I think that they're kind of the social voice
for sure
of the public. That comics are going to start saying things I think that are so obnoxious and offensive. Like when comics talk together, right? We do that all the time, and it used to not be a big deal, and now it's kind of can I even say this off stage? Mm-hmm. So it gets a little silly, but I think it'll shift. It goes in waves.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think the comics to a large extent are sort of the litmus test.
Yeah.
As to what. So the catalyst to the Antony Gordon show was there are so many, specifically I think younger folks that are living, without meaning, without purpose, without direction.
Yeah, no, it's horrible.
And it's a reactive society. It's no proactive, like, what am I doing here? And I don't know if it's just me. The exposure that I have to that generation, they're just miserable.
No, yeah. And I think a lot of that is the social media stuff. And it's and I'm guilty of it myself, going on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And it's all, you're not going to be a Kardashian. It's just not going to happen. That's their world. That's not yours.
Yep.
And I think the fact that people are reading less, they're online more and reading less. So people are learning less. Like no one knows his basic history, which I think has also affected the politics of this country.
Oh, the whole society.
And the whole social media. It's just like you'll go around and you watch when these guys will go to college campuses and ask people like basic history questions.
Yeah.
And they don't know what the Holocaust is. Like they don't know,
it blows me away.
What war did George Washington fight? They have no idea. And the loss of that, I think, of just knowing basic history. It's like when I was just watching today, when they talked about the strike about killing Soleimani, not to get into politics, whatever. I don't do politics either. That's the other, stuff that I have. Like I do some Trump stuff on stage, but I don't pick sides. I just think he's a funny character.
Yeah, no,
he's a fun character to do. So it's like it's totally ridiculous. So like he's fun to do, but I don't pick sides. But even as someone like me who doesn't pick politics, to watch these answers, this guy would ask these college students at Georgetown, what did you think? Well, because the United States is a white supremacist, racist country that has a history of white supremacy. I was just like, compared to what? Like, compared to what country are you talking about? Every country on earth? Like every country has an awful history where they were, it's absurd.
It's totally absurd.
It's, and they just don't know this. No one knows basic history anymore. They don't learn about it.
I as a non-American, it was one of the biggest shockers when I came to this country. It's a very parochial country. People, the world starts at LA and New York. And I hear...
Oh, yeah, if you live in one of these two cities, it's like the rest of the country doesn't even exist.
100%. It's a little bubble.
I tell people, the biggest hicks in America are New Yorkers.
100% true.
Like you ever ask a New Yorker, you ever been to Oregon? You ever been to Idaho? You ever been to Arkansas? What do I need to go there for? I live in New York, and it's a great city. I 100%. I love going there. I love performing there.
Yeah, but the world doesn't exist outside.
There's no reason. It's sort of like when you go to Israel. Like I find that people who live in Tel Aviv have a similar attitude.
Yeah, right.
Because my friends live in Tel Aviv, and they'll go to Jerusalem once a year, maybe.
And it's it's
45 minutes away. Oh, I'm not going there. I just like I get it. Tel Aviv is a great city. I understand you have everything you need here, just like New York. But you should get out.
Right.
A little bit, you should visit other parts of the country to know that, where your salad comes from. It's like ridiculous.
So it dawned on me as you're talking about, this is your niche. This is, clearly a well-known guy certainly in the Jewish circle. The recent spiking in anti-Semitism, whether you like it or not, your last name, doesn't sound Roman Catholic.
Yeah, it's funny. Even when I started, I would avoid doing Jewish material like the plague. It's because I didn't want to be the Jewish guy, I would do no Jewish material.
Really?
Yeah, none. And he's like my late night sets have nothing Jewish, one spot I did on Craig Ferguson, I
saw stuff on Craig that was very non-Jewish stuff.
Yeah. And it's because I didn't want to be known as this Jewish. And then I realized like, this is absurd. Like I am very Jewish. Like why don't I just embrace it? And then everything got better. You have to be yourself. The secular stuff got better. Everything got better. Once you're more genuine to who you are, that's how it is.
So it's interesting. I'm speaking of...
But yeah, with the anti-Semitism... here's the thing. I think it's I think it's more isolated, obviously, in like the Brooklyn area. That's been like a specific issue there with the African American community. It's been an issue, but obviously 90, God knows what percentage and higher aren't for any of this stuff and think it's ridiculous. You have a few wackos who are going to do things, but then, and I think it also is. Sometimes it's exacerbated and exploited by various politicians here and there. Like some 15-year-old punk spray painting a swastika on someone's garage. Personally, I don't consider that a hate crime. I'm sorry. That's just some punk idiot being a teen dummy. That it's when no one was hurt. When people are hurt, that's another story. If people are getting attacked, yeah, that's an issue. And it's again, I just think it's communities need to come together and understand each other, and that stuff will go away more.
Absolutely.
Europe's another ballgame.
Europe's a completely. Yeah. It's definitely.
But here, I think that there is no great history of anti-Semitism in this country. That's what makes it different. George Washington sent letters to that synagogue in Providence.
I don't think we realized
saying it's you guys are part of this community too. It's don't worry. It's the oldest Jewish cemetery in America is in Chinatown in New York.
Yeah,
and I went to see it. Now my friend Jamie Gong, who's actually Jameson Gong, he lives in Hong Kong. He's a comedian.
Yeah,
and he's an official tour guide in New York and gives tours in Chinatown. And he told me, Avi, the oldest Jewish cemetery. I go, where is he? He goes right around the corner. And he took me, and it was actually open. It's owned by the Spanish Portuguese synagogue, which I think is in the 70s in the Upper West Side. And it was open that day. Like some relatives were there looking for a relative who was buried there. And you have soldiers buried there who fought with Washington.
That's unbelievable.
It's like 2 or 3 of them. And I took a photo of it and sent it to the guys. I did shows in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I'm still in touch with some of those guys. And I said that they're like, oh, this is great. So it's a different history in the United States as opposed to Europe.
I agree.
So
let's lead a little bit to you particularly and the pressure of the kind of work that you do. I mean, again, I can speak with something with first-hand experience. Come rain or shine, you got to get out there. You got to get on stage. You got to be, you got to be in the zone.
Right.
And often you don't feel like you're in the zone.
Yeah. Well, I learned early from my acting teacher, Stephen Book. Like he talked about this, how, there's that outside in versus inside out approach. Do I have to feel this way to play it? So Stephen Book, he gave an example once. He said, okay, you have an hour of sunlight left and you have to play this scene. Well, I don't feel that. Well, you're fired.
Exactly.
We don't have time for this. This is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Time is money. So do it. Get out there and do your job.
Yeah.
So I learned from him early. I remember the night Cal Ripken Jr. broke the baseball record for the most consecutive games played.
Yep.
And he started off acting class like that. He goes, I saw an amazing thing tonight. I saw a guy get applauded by tens of thousands of people for going to work every day and not missing a day. Yeah, and he goes, actors don't get sick. And then let's begin. So if you're a comic and you have a show to do, unless you've like lost your voice or, I was sick this last tour in Israel. You could ask the guys in the van. They were not thrilled with me having a roll of tissues with me. Get on stage and do your job, and then you go rest afterwards. But if you have a job to do, get up and do it to the best of your ability, as long as you physically are able to.
Yeah, that's the way that's the, if you're not happy and just still clap your hands.
Yeah, that's your job, is to get out there and do your job, and it's, whether you're in a good mood or not,
for sure,
it's your job to put everyone else in a good mood. So just do it.
Very true. So you obviously have exposure to a lot of young people. If you were giving advice, and a lot of our listeners are, I would say during their formative years, it's a different generation, it's a different time. What's the kind of advice and some ideas, just generally, that you would want to impart to our 72 million listeners right now, that are just to have a meaningful, productive and happy life? As cliched as that sound, I think that someone like yourself, you've had a tremendous cross-section, you've had success. People don't realize, Avi, for every Avi Liberman, there are many guys that have played the clubs, and right now are saying, would you like a salad with that? I mean, that's the truth.
That's the reality. I mean, I remember, it's interesting. You have to put things in perspective. Like I thought, look, I could be miserable and say I'm not as successful. God knows how many people more successful than me. A ton.
Name one.
I'm still, every other comic. But you have to put things in perspective. I remember I thought I'd made it when I finally quit my day job. I was a teaching assistant at first and second grade teaching assistant at Sinai. And I realized you don't really get any respect unless you're doing it full time.
No, for sure not.
But I realized the less time I was full time, then I went to part time. I realized when I went to part time, I was making more money. That I would get more gigs, and so I finally stopped. And I remember I was in New York City at a Friday night Sabbath dinner thing, and it was like some late night gathering, and there are all these people in this apartment, and this guy just says, "Oh," so we start talking. He goes, "Oh, so what do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a comic, actually." And he goes, "That's it? That's all you do?" And I had to stop. And I go, "Yeah, that's it. That's all I do." Was, wow, that's great. And I thought I'd made it. I thought, that's it. I've achieved, everything else is gravy.
But think about it.
Now, I could look at this and go, I'm not Dave Chappelle, therefore I'm a failure. But I tell people, you can't base your happiness on how successful you are in show business. Otherwise, the only happy guy in town is Tom Hanks.
You're right.
There's always going to be somebody who's more successful than you, who's more relevant than
100%.
you. That's just, you have to find something else meaningful in your life. Find that other thing. Because, you're going to be battling show business. Even if you book a sitcom, it will get canceled eventually. I don't 100%. Care if you're on Friends. It's going to stop. So what happens after that? You've got to have something else that you find meaningful. I would say stay off of Instagram or Facebook if you're a teen, all that kind of stuff. Always be in the middle of a book. Find some book that you're interested in. I don't care how fast or slow you read it. Be in the middle of one, and when you finish it, find another one. Then, always be in the middle of that, and travel when you can. It'll put things in perspective. It's, my life is awful, I'm poor. Really? Why don't you go take a trip to various places, even in Eastern Europe, and you tell me how bad you've got it. Go to Mexico for a day and walk around, or even go to Europe and see, the size of apartments that my friends who struggle live in. It's not easy. it's not so bad in this country, relatively speaking. You have to keep those things in perspective. But again, it's hard because you see friends that are more successful than you that are doing things that you're not doing.
So before we started streaming live to the world, I think one of the things that we're talking about is how people equate their self-worth and their net worth. You were talking about someone who...
Yes, there's a friend of mine.
If he lost his dough...
Yeah, basically told me straight up, I takes medication for it and was blatantly honest with me and said, I cannot separate my happiness from how successful I am in show business. If they're not on a show, writing on a show, doing this, just miserable. And so I can't do it.
So his entire sense...
And of
self-worth, of peace of mind is completely contingent on externality.
Yes.
That he's got zero control over.
Yes.
How can you live a life? You walk on eggshells.
Well, then, I think that it's not to sound too preachy, but it's find, thank God I have my Judaism. I think that it's to lean on, and to help me and it's to learn things other than show business. And it's find whatever religion it is. I think that would be helpful. Charity work, something, you've got to find something
that has meaning
in your life. Yeah. Helping someone else, volunteering at a charity. And that should honestly come first.
Right.
Show business will take care of itself. If you're working hard enough and doing what you're doing and getting better at what you're doing, it'll hopefully come to pass. But focus on, it's like the screenwriting for me. It's totally devoid that, if it gets made, great, but I know that there's value there. And as soon as I was done with one, I don't obsess on it. I move to the next one, find something else to write. That don't stop. You have to continuously be in motion of like looking at other projects to do,
as opposed to looking back and
yeah. I mean, The Godfather sat on a shelf for 20 years. Do you think you have to? It's who knows,
right?
So you can't put all your eggs in one basket. That's the first thing I would say. Like
that's a great
cast a wide net, especially if you're working in this business.
Yep.
And for God's sakes, find something else aside from show business that you're passionate about.
Yep.
Very
sound advice.
Yeah, and you'll be much less miserable.
So to wrap things up, there's two questions I try and ask most guests, and it's just amazing when I bump into people that these are the questions and the responses that seem to resonate. The penultimate question is, when you look back at your journey called life, can you isolate the moments when you are most at peace or most happy? And is there a common denominator?
I'd say there's definitely crossover. I think I'm, I'm not married yet, so hopefully that'll, the most happy things will come.
Well,
soon
after this podcast, we get thousands of resumes.
God willing, that's fine. That should be my biggest headache.
Amen.
So that, I think you have to have, in a sense, a little bit of that. Like when they ask basketball player, what's your best game? Hopefully my next one.
Yep.
What's your best actors? What's your best movie? The next one. So hopefully that'll be when it comes to the happiness, peace stuff. But I can tell you what I've enjoyed over the years, like the shows in Israel. I enjoy when those go well.
That's great.
Because I think that there's meaning behind it, and it's a two-pronged positive in the sense that comedians are going there places they probably would never go, having a good experience, coming back and, being good emissaries of that country, and at the same time entertaining a bunch of people who normally would not be able to see comics of that caliber.
Yep.
And it makes money for a really great charity. So like I'm happy when that is going smoothly. It's stressful and there's a lot of stress involved with it.
But that's more than just making people
putting
laugh.
It together.
There's a context. There's a
it's not just and the comedians, God bless. I mean, they do it for very little money. They do it for just for basically like a stipend.
Amazing.
I mean, some of these guys can make $20,000-$30,000 in a weekend, and they sacrifice a lot. It's basically just so they won't go broke while they're gone. And that's why I want it to be a good experience. So when that goes well, and my act is going over. Generally, I think it's when I'm performing on stage and it's going well, and it's going well.
You're in the zone, and you're hitting it.
And so that's a really nice feeling. And it's, when you're busy and working and doing what you want to do, those are, and I'd say I'm most at peace. Or when, obviously there's still things I want to do. I'd like to see the movies that I've written get made.
For sure.
But there's always going to be something else that you want to do.
Which I guess is the good way for us to wrap this up. And interestingly, this is a question that I've asked other guests, and you never know who's listening, amongst the 240 million listeners, you just never know. And it's happened to a guest before. 5 years from now, Avi, where do you want to be? All things being equal.
I'd like to see the movies that I've written made. There are two now that have some decent potential that are going. I have a big meeting on Monday coming up. And but if you were to sit me down and go, Avi, here's your job. We need you to sit down and write the next 3 or 4 historical narratives about XYZ. That's your job.
You would walk away from comedy then?
No, I would still do it. I mean, because comedy is always something you can just drop by
sure.
a club,
Yeah.
and, if they know who you are or whatever.
Right.
And or I try to do Jewish events like that. I love doing those because it's fun and it's a chunk of material that I don't get to do in clubs.
It's great.
So
and
it's
you're great
fun.
at it.
Oh, thank you. And but that's where I'd like to be. In the middle of another movie, always trying to create something else.
So I will say that I hope and pray that it happens because
I do too.
You deserve it. You're a good guy. Your feet are together. You are someone who is the antithesis of a narcissist. You just bumped each other at the wedding a couple of nights ago. You're just not someone who's pounding his chest and saying, you got to look at me and where's the camera.
It's weird because I think it's the exact opposite of what you learn in like Judaism in a Jewish house. Don't be so arrogant. And then you come to show business, they're like, no, do exactly the opposite.
Exactly.
So it's just, I always like wrestled with that. It's just like a little bit weird, for me. So,
but you were walking a humble road when I saw you a couple of nights ago.
Oh, thanks. Well, if I can fool you, I can fool you.
So let's hope when we reconnect 5 years from now that we'll be on the stage at the Academy Awards with one of your movies.
Fine with me. Yeah.
It's an honor, pleasure, Avi. We'll do this again soon. This is Antony Gordon. Until next time, thanks very much.